This guy was one of the best quarterbacks in school history and suffered an injury that many would never come back from. He was lightly recruited out of high school and was never really given much of a chance to be a star, but he proved everyone wrong, obviously became one of the best UCF players ever, and overcame something that was nearly impossible. Yes, we are talking about McKenzie Milton. In today's video, we're going to talk about his entire rise as a player, his career at UCF and Florida State, how he overcame everything ahead of him, and what ultimately happened to him. But right before we get into it, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we're on the road to 100K, so quickly be sure to do that, smash that like button for the algorithm, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started and talk about what happened to McKenzie Milton. In order to understand how McKenzie Milton made this comeback, we need to go way back in time and see how he became a star to begin with. Like most kids, McKenzie grew up loving the game of football, and he idolized a player by the name of Marcus Mariota. He was the youngest of four, and the family was competitive at everything they did, including football, but he didn't grow up in the state of Texas or Florida, he grew up in Hawaii. Oahu is not a very big island, so there were not a ton of sports opportunities for him, and guys who want to play big-time college football typically don't come from there. At a young age, he became good friends with a college football star that most of us know by the name of Tua Tagovailoa. Those guys were on the same team in 5th grade, and while Tua was the starting quarterback, McKenzie was the Swiss Army knife who did a little bit of everything. Tua actually had this to say about him. Quote, "McKenzie was our go-to player. He played everything for us. If we needed a score, McKenzie was our guy, and I threw it to him." They both continued to develop their friendship and skills on and off the field, and both would become stars. Tua went off to the prestigious private high school known as St. Louis High School, while Milton went to Mililani High School. He began to put up big numbers, but he was never satisfied with how well he played. His high school coach had this to say, quote, "McKenzie never took a day off. He could throw for 400 yards Friday night, and most kids would be like, yeah, I did what I needed to do, but he'd be like, no, coach, let's get together, I've got the receivers, let's get more work in." This mindset would help McKenzie through the game of life. Milton and Tua trained relentlessly, and they helped put the state on the map. His trainer said, quote, "The atmosphere when they trained was incredible. Every Thursday night was competition Thursdays. We did one-on-one tug of war, quick hand drills, races, sprints, change of direction, everything you name it. They competed in every sense of the word." Those two were coming from the same class, and you could argue that McKenzie helped make Tua the player he is today, and Milton's work back then helped shape the college football world forever. Milton would end up winning the state's Player of the Year award after he passed for over 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, while also rushing for nearly 1,000 yards and 12 more scores on the ground, and they also won a state title over St. Louis. Unfortunately, he would get injured as a senior, and Tua would beat him and become the state Player of the Year in 2016. That was a tough break for McKenzie, and it kind of hurt him on the recruiting trail as well. Originally, he was actually going to be staying home and taking his talents to play for Hawaii, which was very respectable. He'd be playing for the home state, and legends such as Jimmy Chang, Colt Brennan, and most recently Cole McDonald have all been big-time names to come through that program, and Milton could have been the next one. He had heard from the military schools and the Rainbow Warriors, but his recruitment wasn't quite done yet. During his senior year, Milton said, quote, "A couple of other schools have started to show interest. Northern Arizona, Charleston Southern, and Oregon have been keeping in touch a lot. Nothing against Northern Arizona and Charleston Southern, but they are way different than Oregon, so why on earth was he even considered there?" Well, he had actually caught the Ducks' interest when he was named the quarterback MVP among 62 other guys who went to Oregon for a camp that summer. He was also the quarterback MVP of the Boise State camp. So why on earth was this guy not getting better offers? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. On the other hand, Tua became a 5-star recruit who chose to go to Alabama, while McKenzie just wanted to be an Oregon Duck. That would not happen, but he did get the best alternative, as he chose to commit to their offensive coordinator, Scott Frost. He was now the head coach for UCF, and when he got that offer, he had a tough decision to make. He decided to go across the world to Orlando, Florida, and committed to UCF. Tua had this to say about all of it. Quote, "I'm proud of him for everything that he's done. He had to fight for what he has. Nothing came easy to him. He was going to play for the University of Hawaii. It's a gutsy decision to want to move all the way across the country to play at UCF instead of staying at home where you could see your family almost every day." He chose Scott Frost because he liked him, he offered him playing time, and because, fun fact, he was the offensive coordinator for Marcus Mariota, and the writing was on the wall for Milton. According to 24/7 Sports, Milton was a 3-star recruit, the number 90 athlete, and the 1,161st best player in the class of 2016. Going into his freshman year, the Knights had just gone 0-12 the year prior, and they needed a culture change. While Milton was expected to compete and play eventually, I don't think anyone saw him becoming a good star player right away. Milton actually started 10 games his freshman year, and he led the Knights to a 6-6 regular season record, and they would go to the Cure Bowl. They would lose to Arkansas State in that game, but he was a glimmer of hope for the future after he passed for nearly 2,000 yards and combined for 13 touchdowns. Going into 2017, expectations were somewhat high. He threw 4 touchdowns in their Week 1 win, and a few weeks later, tossed 6 touchdowns in a huge win over Cincinnati. After a close win over SMU, the Knights were now 8-0, and they had lost 1 game due to the hurricane. Milton combined for 13 scores in the next 3 games, including 5 in their thrilling 49-42 win over their arch-rival USF. This game was won off a kick return touchdown late in the game, and went on to be one of the best games of this decade in college football, and was a memorable night in school history. They were now 12-0 going into the American Conference Championship game, and UCF football was the talk of the town. In a double overtime win against Mike Norvell and the number 20 ranked Memphis Tigers, Milton threw for nearly 500 yards and had 6 combined touchdowns, and they were now 12-0. They were snubbed out of the college football playoff and matched up with number 7 Auburn in the Peach Bowl, where they were told they had no chance. Milton didn't have his best game of his career, but he had 3 combined scores and led them to a 1-possession win over the Auburn Tigers and the punctuation mark on his season. He finished the year at 4,037 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 8 more rushing touchdowns on the ground, and this was huge. UCF football claimed a national title because of it. Scott Frost left for the Nebraska job, and he was the American Player of the Year. Going into 2018, UCF brought in offensive coordinator Josh Heupel from Missouri to be the next head coach, and it was a great year. He helped them beat Pittsburgh, Memphis, and number 24 Cincinnati, and the team was once again undefeated going into their home finale against USF. Up to that point, Milton had thrown for 2,663 yards and 25 touchdowns with 9 more on the ground, and was the 2018 American Conference Player of the Year. But then, he would be hit with a setback that would not only mess up his college football career, but potentially change his life forever. In the second quarter against the Bulls, he took a QB keeper, and when he got tackled, he destroyed his leg on the field, and it was really, really bad. Both teams huddled around him as he was in excruciating pain and had to be immediately carted off the field. He was assessed by team doctors, and they determined he needed to be rushed to the hospital for emergency knee surgery to save his right leg. Dr. Bruce Levi, one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the United States, took over Milton's case. They had multiple teams working on him, and he said that Milton suffered a knee dislocation where the thigh bone and the lower leg were completely dislocated, and it messed up blood flow in his leg. He also tore ligaments and some tendons, and he had no nerve function in his knee apparently. What I find so ironic about this is that Tua Tagovailoa also had that horrible leg injury when he was at Bama. It's so sad that both of these guys' careers were basically ended on that. One doctor apparently told Milton that nearly 50% of his patients with similar injuries would have to have their leg amputated. The damage was also more severe than expected, and they were pretty much certain he would never play football again. The doctors weren't trying to be mean or rude, but they had just never seen anyone come back from this. The timetable was going to be months, but then he would suffer another setback. He woke up with excruciating pain in his knee one morning, and he had an infection. This required another surgery and prolonged his recovery an additional 6 months. He would work and rehab, and unfortunately a lot of the college football world had forgotten about him to this point. He would return to UCF in October of 2020 and was listed on the Knights roster, but he did not play in a game. Instead, he ran the scout team offense, which for most people would have been good enough, but not for Milton. He didn't want to mess up what Dylan Gabriel had going on there, so he decided to put his name in the portal, and if anything, some sort of Group of 5 school would take a chance on him. But a big-time program from down the road decided to give him a call. Mike Norvell was in his first year as the head coach at Florida State, and he told Milton he wanted him to become his quarterback as a graduate transfer. Norvell was the head coach at Memphis when Milton would tear his Tigers teams up, so he knew how lethal of a player he could be if he was healthy. Not only that, but Florida State also had issues at that quarterback spot and knew that Milton could be a great player to bring to the position. Milton played in the spring game, and going into 2021, it looked like there would be a quarterback battle between him and incumbent starter Jordan Travis. For a while, many said it would be Milton, but then going into their Week 1 matchup with Notre Dame, Travis was the starter. He had some good and bad moments during that game, and the Noles were making a comeback in the fourth quarter when fate stepped in and happened. This just so happened to be the first normal game at Doak Campbell Stadium. This was the first game since Bobby Bowden had passed away, and they needed a little bit of magic. Travis would lose his helmet and would have to sit out of play. Immediately, Milton ran onto the field, and the crowd came to life in what was one of the most special moments in college football history. He completed every pass on that drive and led them down the field to get within 3. He saved the day on a bad snap, and after a game-tying field goal and a defensive stop, the game went to overtime. Unfortunately, they messed up and they would miss the field goal, and Notre Dame would hit theirs, and no one in America wanted to see that happen, including myself, and it just wasn't fair that the story had to end like that. But I think it's only the first chapter in his story at Florida State. He played really well towards the end of it, and I think he's going to have a chance to play more than just one game this year. Who knows what there is still in store for McKenzie Milton, and if anything, we know he's going to be successful outside of football. We already know that because he started a company with Miami quarterback De'Aaron King to help other athletes with NIL, and he has made the greatest comeback in college football history in my opinion. From being friends with Tua as a kid, being under-recruited, working his tail off, and eventually taking a risk to go play for a new coach at a struggling program, Milton put it all on the line. He was a star there, was a 2-time Conference Player of the Year, and led his team to 25 straight wins. He had a gruesome injury and was told he would never play football again, and that potentially he would not be able to walk without pain. He didn't listen to any of that, got to work like he always did, and found a way to get back on the field. Instead of complaining when he wasn't starting, he supported Jordan Travis and knew that when his time would come, he would be ready. He went 5 of 5 from the field, helped lead a comeback, and has now captivated an entire college football world, and this was by far the greatest moment of this weekend, and what a start to the 2021 college football season it has been. So how did he do after that first game? Well, it wasn't pretty. He would end up playing a lot in the next 3 games, but he combined for 5 touchdowns compared to 2 touchdowns, and his completion percentage was in the low 60s. Things were not working, and they had lost every game that he had played a lot in, so they decided to go all in on Jordan Travis. He would end up throwing a touchdown later in the season against NC State, and would appear in their game against Florida, but he ended up throwing a pick, and that would be the last play of his career. Florida State missed a bowl game, and Milton will go down as one of the best quarterbacks of the decade, but he did not have the best finish. But from where he came, this was unbelievable. He threw for over 9,000 yards in his career and combined for 95 touchdowns. Milton is an inspiration to everyone, and it was a blast getting to watch him. What do you guys think, though? If you're a Florida State fan, what went wrong for Milton in 2021? Who's the best quarterback in UCF football history, and who should I take a look at in my next video? Be sure to comment that down below, hit that like button if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.